Yes, let's try.
I'm sure airplane off, so it's not.
I heard this about 2 years ago, I was here, I thought. And I started. And I couldn't see on my heart. Let's see. So now it's.
So I'm 52 years old, born and raised here, and we've been talking about, as a town, improving this area since before I was born. We're not exaggerating when we say 50 years. One of the things we found out when we started on this project is that there was a project very similar to us in the late 70s. There was another project similar to us in the late 80s, and there was another one in the early 2000s. And unfortunately, not a lot has been done. And so our view is, we've talked about this for a very long time. We don't expect everyone to agree with every single piece of what we're proposing. We don't expect everyone to love every single piece. But we have put a lot of work into this, and we think this is the right plan to move forward now. And so we think it's time to make it happen. The other thing I just wanted to say is that every single person here has the same goal. You all came out to understand this, and all we're trying to do is make Woodstock even better. Right? It's just a wonderful place to live. I have a 12-year-old son. It's a wonderful place to raise him. We all love it here. That's why we're here. And everyone on this committee, and I imagine everyone in this room, we all just want to do the same thing, which is make things better here. And so we've been working to try to propose that. We're going to play a short video. As a task force, I'll explain who we are after this clip, but we went out and interviewed a lot of folks in town, asking them what they want to see improved here at the rec field.
The skate park, would be great to have. We have the one that's the building, and the skate park currently is very dilapidated. So for a healthier, safer environment for the kids and the community as a whole, I think having something like that would be great.
I'd love to see a multifaceted, but also spaces where other community members can become involved.
I'd like to see Google, definitely, and the Congress work.
Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, I want to. All purpose gym and a rec field.
This Black Tide would be awesome for the little kids to be able to run around and look at outdoor workout equipment. I'd love to see a community garden as well as a pool that everyone can.
So I'm calling you from Utrecht, Holland, and the reason I'm working on the Henry Lee Field Task Force and Recreation Center and Youth Center improvement program is because I'd like to prove that the US can have as nice of things as Europe. Let's do it.
I've been going to the park outside, and I've been recently going to the youth center. It's really fun there, and a lot of kids go there. I think the basketball courts and tennis courts should be improved, skate parks should also be improved, and youth center should be a little better. So basically everything should be.
To have a community pool where everybody can swim, participate, and there's a lifeguard on duty, and it just becomes this pillar of our community where we socialize. Skill of learning to swim is a valuable life skill that children need to know from this age, from earlier. And if we were to offer swimming lessons,
Pools should be open to the people that live in town, around town, shouldn't just be for camp. I'd like to see the fields nicer, so for pickup games on Sunday.
I've always wanted a big public pool. Olive has it, Rosendale has it. Why would we not have it? I would love a big public pool for me, for my kids who go there every day. It's something the town needs and has always needed, and I would love that, and we would be there all the time.
I am Jay Holden. What I'd like to see at the youth center is nature trails, one along the north border and the other one in the back property. I'd love to see some new stuff there to
youth center, freshen up those buildings, fix up that skate park, and pave a little bit more of the basketball area, get everybody a little bit space to hang out, that's a little more comfortable.
Skate park should be nicer. Wait. Like, compared to Solomon.
At the top of my wish list for the recreation field campus is a dedicated senior citizen center with a recreational program managed by a program director.
It'd be so great for the kids to have some place to swim, especially since the proposing zoning swimming pools in town. And just to make it more community-like.
I would just like to have a place for recreation and to play with my community and have some fun.
Let's get a fitness center so Woodstock can stay healthy.
Love to see something for families. I would love to see like a town pool. Might be a big ask, but that would be incredible where your kids, your grandkids have a picnic. Oh my God, that would be amazing.
So as you can hear, everyone has different wants and desires. Obviously, pool was a top of mind for a ton of folks. I'm going to talk about this a little bit right up front because I know that there's a lot of information out there about what we're doing. And it's a very ambitious program. We knew that going in. We have really aimed for the stars here. But what everyone should understand is that there are phases for this. There are priorities in how we think about it. And so for whatever you've seen so far online, and we're going to get to the end of this presentation, all the numbers and the costs and everything. But what you should know up front as we talk about this is that we're recommending that the town hold a referendum that would basically ask taxpayers to pay for a third of the project. So if this is a $30 million project, the referendum will be for about $10, $11 million. Under no scenario are we going to propose that the town could possibly pay for a full $30 million project. The rest of it's going to come from grants and private donations. And if those things don't come through, we hold off on building those. So today we're really going to focus primarily on the first third of the project. We're going to discuss the whole project, but keep in mind that when we asked you and asked all of us, because we're taxpayers as well, obviously, we're not going to be asking everyone to pay for the entire project. So the presentation today, we're just going to run through a bunch of different things and then get to the Q&A. All of this will be available online right after the presentation or by tomorrow, I suppose. So you don't have to take notes and there will be no test. So we are the Youth Center Task Force. Just so you know, we've been meeting for almost 2 years. We have Patrick Acker right over here, who is the head of the Youth Center staff. Joseph Appel. Peter Cantine. Jason Glazer. Jackie Manganero. Lori Osmond. And I'm Ben Shaffer. So, I don't like to go to presentations where they read right off the slide, but this was so important to us that we put it up here, and I'm going to read the entire thing. It really does give you a sense of what we're trying to accomplish here. So we envision the transformation of the Woodstock Youth Center and Andy Lee campus into a vibrant community hub, fostering a safe, inclusive, accessible, and nurturing space for our youth and for all. Through this investment in Woodstock's future, we aim to strengthen intergenerational ties and enhance the appeal of our town for families. With a focus on health, recreation, and community connection, we strive to establish a third space that serves as a cornerstone for the holistic well-being of our youth and the entire community. So this project, when we were first came together, it was just about the youth center, but very quickly we realized that the whole area really needs revitalization. And so we looked at it through the prism of how do we have this intergenerational community space? And that mission statement has really driven every decision that we made. If you think about the health and economic benefits, You know, clearly, we think that there is a need for community space here that hasn't existed for a long time. We do try to attract families, you know. I work in town on the weekends, we see a ton of tourists come to town. People love this area. But when you ask, what is there for families? What is there for young children? Well, we think that there are some pieces that are lacking. Safety, you heard someone talk about it on the movie. You know, there's a lot of opportunities to teach people how to swim. And then when we get into the discussion about the youth and the youth center, you'll understand what we're talking about in terms of safety there. The wellness, just a general feel. I mean, Woodstock, clearly, we should be having, you know, a nice little wellness vibe, and the senior support. And this is one thing I'll point out, that when we first got together, we were focused on the youth, but I was amazed personally to see how often that this space that we're all sitting in is used by the seniors. Almost every day, most hours of the day, this room is filled with seniors doing all sorts of different activities. And so we very quickly came to the conclusion that there had to be an additional dedicated senior center. We also want to have a permanent multi-use pavilion. We think of that as a big pavilion that can house a farmer's market, it can house events, it can do all sorts of things for the community. And it's one of my personal projects for this that I'm really excited for. I spent a lot of time in Ithaca, New York, which has a wonderful farmer's market that really is a draw for the whole community. And we just picture it as something that brings people here. Instead of having a farmer's market in the parking lot where it is now, where it's very dusty and there's really nowhere to sit, it's just not that enjoyable of a space. We want to bring that here and bring the whole community to come and enjoy that space together. So the rationale, we were appointed by the town supervisor way back in 2023. We're all volunteers. We have met weekly for almost 2 years working on this. There were only 2 sacred cows in this entire project, and we're sitting in one of them. This building is the one building that has been updated in the recent past. And so when we went about this, we said, we're not going to touch this building. You know, this is something that we're not doing anything with, but we are going to add on to it, which I'll get to. And we really asked the community, what does it want? We met with hundreds of people. We had all sorts of focus groups. We literally mailed postcards to every single address in Woodstock. We had billboards, discussions. We've had 5 publicly heard meetings during this process. And this is our 3rd sort of board meeting with the community. So when you think about what this space is, this space has been evolving for hundreds of years. And it's one of the reasons we think, you know, things can continue to evolve while also paying homage to our past. You know, it started off as hunting grounds, it became a farm. Eventually, the Fish and Game Club acquired it and donated it to the town. It's been a lot of things, but we think now is really the time to enhance what it is. For those of you who don't know, this on the left here is Andy Lee. So that's what the field is named after. He was a very popular high school at Onteora. I think he was a junior or a senior, and unfortunately he was killed in a hunting accident. And the school got together and they renamed the field after him. The building that we're sitting in right now was originally a church, the St. Joan Catholic Church, and that's what it was originally. So if you think about the field, for all those who know the field well, you know, again, growing up here, this is what we think of as the rec field. This is an image of it. If you go to the next slide, you can see what it is. It's actually 4 separate parcels that the town owns. And I would argue that 95, maybe 99% of Woodstockers don't really understand that the town owns this other 6.3 acres. And so that's if we were standing here looking towards the tennis courts, you look to the left, there's 6.3 acres that go up there. And when we first got together as a group, we thought that's where a lot of the building would happen, but it turns out that that is almost entirely wetlands. And what we're hoping to do there is turn it into beautiful trails for walking and hiking. This is the current layout of the field. As you can see, there are 2 baseball fields. The reality is those are not used often together, maybe one day a year, if that. The one field is used particularly for softball. And there's a lot of areas where, you know, again, we think that there's room for a lot of improvement here. So the current state of the youth center building, for those of you who don't know it, it's right out that window there, over there. And the main point here is to show that while a lot of the youth, my son included, love going there, it's a building that is really in a very difficult position. As part of this process, we interviewed 7 different architectural firms. Every single one basically said that building is beyond salvageable and it needs to be torn down. So here are some pictures of it, but I would also encourage you, when when appropriate, you can go over there and take a look at it for yourself. But clearly, there are a lot of challenges, and particularly I would say for handicap accessibility as well. But we just think our youth deserve a lot more than what that building can offer. Patrick, who runs the youth centers here, why don't you come up and just talk a little bit about what you're doing there and what you think can happen?
Thank you for all coming out. I'm Patrick Acker, the Recreation Director at the Woodstock Youth Center. I started here part-time 17 years ago, and I've been the director for the last roughly 13. In that time, I've worked over there. We've had a lot of kids come from the community, we employ people there, things like that. But as you can see, when you drive by, the building is in pretty rough shape. As our numbers change, they go down, but space is a big issue over here. Environment for our kids to grow up in and be a part of. Being in a house, basically, that's turned into a recreational center. It makes, supervision difficult. So sometimes we're not able to utilize the upstairs. And with our numbers increasing, space becomes a big issue. Hopefully, if we get the new youth center, the lines of sight will be better. We'll be able to supervise the kids, more appropriately. If we end up putting it out in the field here, what it does is it gets us a little closer to the basketball court, to the tennis court, the things that, parents, when they drop their kids off here at the youth center, they expect them to be supervised. So by having us in the middle of everything, it allows us to keep a better eye and better security for the kids. Also, if you notice, we're very close to the road there, and I've had the maintenance department come in, they can put up multiple signs, we have arrows there that show that it's a one-way only, but people still insist on coming through there. When you have 30, 40, 50 kids running around, it makes it a little difficult, it's a hazard. So getting away from that road front is big. It would also pull us away from the neighborhoods, giving maybe a little more peace and quiet, but more than anything, lines of sight, being in the mix of everything here, so the kids that come to the youth center can utilize it as a campus versus dropping off here and then going out there where they're not as supervised or anything like that. So.
So one of the things I want to make clear, it's been a very hard challenge trying to reach people. Woodstock Times no longer exists. We're all sort of scattered across all sorts of different media, but we really did quite a bit to try to reach out to everyone. And so for all of you coming here again, thank you for coming. We hope that you did hear our message, but we wanted to kind of highlight what we've done. Peter, and I know you had something you wanted to say about this in terms of how we sort of reached out to people and who informed the decisions that we were making here.
Peter, can you go up and use a microphone? There's more than one. Thank you.
So as Ben has said, we've done our best over almost 2 years to reach out to the entire community. We've had, this will be our 6th public meeting with 2 town board meeting presentations. We've met with individual groups and individual stakeholders in the community. We've had 2 days of focus groups, and what this has done is informed us task force members what you, the community, want. None of us have a stake in any component of this proposed project. It all comes from the community. And that's what has driven us, and that's hopefully what will drive us forward.
So accessibility, I still want to highlight this. There are folks on our task force for which this is particularly important. If you look around this field, if you look around particularly at the youth center itself, it's just not accessible for people who have certain needs. And, it's just, this was done 50, 75, 80 years ago. It's time to make that, to remedy that situation and allow everyone to enjoy the space. So really, the next part of this, we're going to go into what we are actually proposing. And again, I'm a Woodstocker. I know that this is a very big deal. There's a lot of stuff to take in, particularly for those who have not seen any of this before. we are proposing an incredibly ambitious plan. Keep in mind, again, there are phases to this. But also keep in mind that we've been meeting for 2 years. We thought about a lot of different potential ideas and different ways to think about this. And this is really what we think is the best possible solution. So what you're looking at here is the entire field stretching over here. Again, that 6 acres here that arguably very, very few people understand is owned by the town. That is one of the highlights of our plan, to have beautiful trails back there. And the idea is that this becomes much more of a campus, where you come into a nice drop-off area as opposed to having this parking lot that every single space just drives out into Rock City Road inexplicably. You know, we want people to come in here, walk in, and if you know, someone wants to do a short loop and walk around a trail around the field that we know now, that's fine. If you want to do a bigger walk around the whole field and back behind the tennis courts, you can do that with new trails. You can also go all the way up in and have a very meaningful hike and meaningful walk while keeping all the nature intact. We placed many of the here, again, everything will be built certainly day one, and some of the things may not happen, but this is how we envision it being. This piece right here is the youth center. And again, if you listen to Patrick, what happens now is people are up here, kids go all the way in the back with no idea what's going on back there. You can't see them. By having it here, the sight lines allow Patrick and his staff to keep an eye on everyone that is on inside of the campus. Over here, the building that we're in, the community center, as I said, we're not going to touch the inside of this building, but we are adding the senior addition right off of this side over here. That senior addition will be approximately the size of this current room. So, you know, it almost doubles the space that seniors will have. And it's really going to be a dedicated senior area. This large building here is a indoor gymnasium. You know, one of the biggest challenges I think a lot of families have right now, a lot of the community members have, not just families, is finding things to do during the winter months. I drive to Kingston to go to the YMCA, etc. We think this can be a beautiful area that can be used for yoga, it can be used for seniors, but it can also be used for basketball, for pickleball, all sorts of things. A real, truly multi-use gymnasium. Next to that would be the basketball court. Next to that is an outdoor pool. And here's high on our wish list, but again, we know we're reaching for the stars here, an indoor pool right up in the front here. We're taking, instead of having 2 baseball fields, which are rarely used together, we're putting one beautiful new field in the back, and essentially moving what we think of as this lawn area here, shifting it off towards the back. Where the tennis courts are, right now, if you think about those tennis courts, you think that's sort of the end of the field. There's actually this big area right behind the tennis courts that's essentially a dust bowl and has been since I was a kid. We're going to shift the tennis courts back there to open up more space. We're moving the community garden from over here into this area, and this will be the playground and a splash pad. You'll now be able to drive back here, access the tennis courts, access the community garden, drop people off. This road that's there now is an access road that again has been there my whole life, and it's only used by a few people that go to the community garden or for emergency services, etc. And then the final piece here, this would be the multi-use pavilion that would house events, farmers markets, and a ton of other things that people could do. Redoing the entire parking area. And one of the things, you know, looking around this room tonight, there's no parking out there right now. It's a terrible situation. We're going to, I think, more than double the parking space available here. And then, of course, we would continue to use the Mountain View parking lot as a runoff parking. Coming in here, I guess I should have done that on this piece, but again, this is all going to be online. You can see it all. If anyone has any questions, all of us are available. But the idea here, again, is to make this much more of a campus feel, allow the sight lines so that you can walk in here, see everything, watch everyone, what everyone's doing, and participate in all sorts of different events that you want to participate in. We're just going to run through some of the images here. And one thing to keep in mind, this is a master plan. These are not construction documents. And so everything that you're going to see, this is the plan we're going with, but not everything is exactly how it will look in the final built product, right? These are sort of, for lack of a better word, sort of a lookbook about what we're trying to do. But these are the spaces we put a lot of effort into it, measuring out the square footage. This would be the youth center over here. This would be the gymnasium inside. And we're just going to flip through some of the images of what we think it could look like. Keeping a very Woodstock sort of ethos about the whole thing. You can keep going. Go ahead. Here's the senior center addition, again, would go off the side there. And additionally, in the back of this building right now, there's this little porch area. And what we found out that when this renovation happened, that was supposed to be essentially a bandstand. Hasn't really been used for that very often. We'd like to build a beautiful bandstand right off the back. People can come and play a banjo or show a movie or have a band or have a speech, whatever it is. This is the community pool complex. This would house the indoor pool and an outdoor pool. And again, these are things we're not asking the town to pay for. The indoor pool in particular is the single biggest expense of this project. But one of the reasons we are pushing this so hard is because there is a new program through New York State, literally called New York Swims. It's run out of the governor's office, and they are providing grants up to $10 million per municipality for pools. We have worked very diligently to position ourselves to be in the running for that. You know, obviously, we can't guarantee we're going to get that. That is a big focus of what we've been working on. Again, some images of what it could be. You could be here doing that. This is the multi-use pavilion. Again, you know, I think there's been a lot of discussion about this. Personally, for me, this is one of the more important pieces. You could flip through. Again, coming really inspired by Ithaca, New York. They have this farmers market. It's just such a wonderful community event. And it brings everyone of all ages out and just gives you an opportunity to spend time with the community. And that's really what we're trying to foster here. If you remember what we talked about with the mission statement, this is not just about fixing the youth center or putting in a pool. It's about creating this intergenerational campus where we can all be amongst each other. Here's a number of images that our architecture firm, Finney Group, and EDR Design. Again, don't get hung up on if you don't like the color of this or that door should be there. Our purpose of this is to move forward and get something built after talking about it for more than 50 years. We will solve all the problems of what people want. And not everyone's going to get everything they want. Not everyone's going to love every piece of it. That's not what this is about. But it's the idea to try to create this campus where we can all share in the enjoyment of this beautiful space. Most of these images are looking from the tennis courts back this way. That's the farmers market pavilion or multi-use pavilion. This is an entranceway into the campus itself. So this, now we're going to get into the sort of the meat of this, and I know a lot of new faces are here, so you may not have seen all this before, but this is the first time we're laying out how we think about the phases of this project, the priorities. It's a really important piece. It comes down to the financing of it. It comes down to how we're going to actually build this. And again, the main thing you should understand is we're not asking the community to pay $30 million for this massive project. What we're going to do is have these essentially 3 phases. The first part in gray is 1A and 1B. The reason it's in 1A and 1B is because our town elected officials very rightly pointed out that, you know, you can't just come out and ask people to pay for this large project. Let's break it up into pieces that may be maybe more in line with what people want to do here. And so the referendum that we're all going to ask you to vote on is going to split just phase 1 into 2 pieces. And I'm going to get into the numbers for all this in the next couple of slides. I know you can't all read it, but 1A, and again, think about the gray area, 1A and 1B, this is the referendum. This is what we want the town to vote on, decide. Section phase 2, priority 3, these are areas where we're going to ask for grants and or private funds. And I would like to actually say one thing right now is that we have not officially begun our fundraising, but just last night, a family whom I know knew we were having this meeting tonight and very generously donated $50,000 to us to begin getting into phase 2 and 3. All of that, all the money that we raise through private donation will be likely contingent on having the referendum passed for 1 and 2. So if we think about just the referendum, sorry, go back. Well, let me go through all of it, and there's going to be a lot of time for Q&A. I promise anyone who has questions afterwards, we'll talk about it. But so 1A and 1B, this is the referendum. This is the only part of this project that we're asking the town to pay. And we're going to have this referendum where you can vote for 1, or you can vote for 1A, or sorry, you can vote for 1A, or you can vote for 1A and 1B. 1A is a youth center, skate park, the basketball court, redoing the whole parking area, extending the parking lot, and having a new playground area with a splash pad. That all in is about $6 million together for that. 1B will include the senior center addition, all the wetland trails, a walkway system inside of the field as we know it, new tennis and pickleball courts, redoing the baseball and softball fields, improving the Veterans Memorial. And just to call that out for a moment, when we were doing this, we met with representatives from the American Legion. And right now, there's a big area over there that says, the stone literally says War Memorial. And everyone there said, it's not a memorial for war, it's a memorial for veterans. And so we think it's a really important thing to improve that and call it a Veterans Memorial and make it more part of this, something for the whole community to memorialize. Working on the central lawn, moving the community garden. And this was a really interesting thing. We talked with the folks who have plots in the community garden. It's been back there for many, many, many years. What happens is the trees actually grew over it. So it doesn't really get very good sunlight. We were concerned that people wouldn't want us to put the tennis courts there or move things, but they actually asked us to move it into a sunnier area. So now it goes on to the north side. And then the turnaround is basically be able to use that access road as a community for the first time ever. 1B will be about 5 million. So altogether, 1A and 1B is about $11 million. And again, you'll be able to vote on this if it's something you choose. Phases 2, that is essentially the indoor gymnasium and the multi-purpose pavilion, as well as a bandstand, adding parking spots to where the current youth center is, and a few other pieces, including a picnic area where people can come and enjoy food from whoever brings picnic food here. The gymnasium, it turns out, is quite expensive. So all in, that phase 2 is about $9 million. Again, that will come from grants and or private funds. And then phase 3 is the most ambitious, the most expensive. All in, it's about $11 million. That is an indoor and outdoor pool. If we can't raise those monies, let's say we get nothing. We fall on our face, we raise no money from grants or private negotiations, well, we'll keep the pool we have and won't get touched. Let's say we can only raise a certain amount, we'll build a beautiful outdoor pool. And if we can raise the full amount through New York Swims and other programs, then we'll do our dream, which is having this indoor outdoor pool. So here's what I just described on the map. Again, for those of you who have not seen it, I know it can be a bit overwhelming. We've all looked at this quite a bit, so we're sort of accustomed to it now. All this is available online, but you see the areas we're trying to build. Essentially, if you think about it at its core, 1A is basically the youth center and the parking, and 1B is the senior edition and everything having to do with the field. It's the bulk of the project. Almost everything gets done in 1A and 1B. 2 is primarily the gymnasium and the multi-use pavilion. The gymnasium being the more expensive part. And then 3 is only the pool complex, right? That's the shoot for the stars one. So, walking around town, people who have known what we've been doing have come up to me and said, that's crazy. We can't afford an indoor pool. Why would you put something like that? That's wild. I don't disagree. It's wild. We're only going to do it if we can get private funds to help. And one of the impetuses for this has been the fact that Arkville, for those of you who don't know, is a tiny town west out on 28. Arkville, I think, has less than 1,000 residents. They had one individual donate indoor pool for the community.
Great.
And people drive from here all the way out there to go swimming. Oh, and one other really important point. Thank you, Lori. So one of the other things we've heard is that, there's too many buildings, you're losing the green space. I think that's a valid concern, except again, we're essentially shifting the green space back. And in fact, when you look at this map, under the current existing proposal, there's about 3.06 acres of green space in the field. With our proposal, it's about 3.47 acres. We're actually gaining green space, which I think is a really important idea. Again, not everyone's going to agree with that. Not everyone's going to agree with shifting it back. Not everyone's going to agree with where this building or that building is. I implore you to get beyond the detailed criticism of things. We've been talking about this for 50 years. Let's move forward and do something, and we can work out the different little pieces. Going into the cost in a little more detail, again, this will all be available, but everything I just said, priority 1, which is 1A and 1B combined, this is the thing that you all will vote on, is about $11 million in total. Priority 2, again, primarily the gymnasium and the multi-use pavilion, about $9 million, the bulk of that being the indoor gymnasium. And priority 3 is just the pool complex, that's $11 million. And again, I just want to reiterate it because I don't want to be walking around and have someone yell at me saying I'm trying to spend all the money. That is only going to happen if we raise those funds through grants or private donations. We got $50,000 by just announcing this meeting. We've identified 5 potential donors that have the ability to write multi-million-dollar checks. I have no idea if we're going to get anywhere with those folks. I keep telling the group internally, I think it's a 10 to 15% chance, but we have started to talk to some of these folks, and it's not a zero. There are definitely folks that are interested in helping us realize this dream. So again, the referendum here kind of breaks it out in terms of what these costs will be, all available online. The youth center itself, about $2.5 million. The skate park, $300,000. You can go through all this. It totals up to about $5.8 million for 1A. 1B, which is essentially everything excluding the gymnasium, the multi-use pavilion, and the pools. That comes into about $6 million for a total of about $11 million. That's what we're proposing the town can pay for. So what does this mean to you as a taxpayer? We've had this question asked quite a bit. We've run our numbers. These are our estimated costs for these things. And never mind, we're not doing. Thank you. Come on. So I'm going to walk through this, and it's a bit complicated. I assume there'll be questions afterwards about this. We can go through it in more detail. I have a background in running these numbers, so I might speak in a way that people aren't comfortable with, but essentially what we're doing here is estimating the cost per $100,000 of assessed value on your property taxes. If we did just 1A, which we went over, just 1A, for every $100,000 of assessed value, property, the amount of money that would go towards this from your taxes would be about $30 annually. $30 annually per $100,000. If we did 1A and 1B, it's about $56 annually. But there's a really important point that I want everyone to understand about this, which is that whatever problems anyone has with the town over many, many years about this or that, it's been run very conservatively fiscally. We are one of the few towns we do not have a lot of debt. And in fact, what's going to happen is at the end of 2025, almost all of our debt will be paid off for all the buildings that the current administration has done and past administration. And what that means is if you think about how much money from your taxes go towards debt servicing, we essentially are getting $300,000 off of our bill starting in 2026. And what that translates into for our tax increase, if we all voted for just phase 1A, it would be an increase over 2025 of $8 for every 100,000. It would be an increase of just $35 if we did all of phase 1A and 1B. To translate that into what actual dollars mean, and this is, again, a little nuanced piece, but your homes, whatever your market value is, that's not your assessed value. If your home is worth on the market $500,000, the assessed value is a little under half of that. And so what that translates to is that if your home is worth $500,000 and you just want phase 1A to happen, the increased taxes that would go towards the debt would be about $20 per year for the whole home of a $500,000 home. If a $1 million home, it'd be $40. That translates to $1.64 a month in terms of the impact to your mortgage. If we did 1A and 1B, the total amount, I think, is about $82 annually for your taxes if you did all of 1A and 1B. And monthly, that translates to about $6.80. So again, I think one of the main takeaways we want you to take from this is that, yes, this is a very ambitious plan. Yes, we want to have a beautiful indoor pool and a lot of these other things, but that's not what we're asking for you all, including ourselves. We're all taxpayers as well. We're not asking any of us to pay for that. It's going to be up to us to try to raise those monies through grants and through private donations. So, we really think this is a once in a generation opportunity to do this. Again, I really just want to focus on this point that I know that there are people who are not happy with this kind of change. I understand being someone who has grown up here, this is a lot to take in for this small town. It's a lot to potentially do on this field that we all know and view in a certain way. But we've spent an inordinate amount of time looking at all the ways that we can help this community. We really think that this is the way to go. So the next step, like I said, we are fundraising. We're thrilled to be able to say that we have that $50,000 without even asking for it yet. We're just beginning that process. We're hopeful, but we're not going to guarantee anything. We'll see what we can do. The referendum date, that's going to be decided by our town board, but we hope it's soon. We hope it's soon, by the way, because we want to build as quickly as possible, but also in order to be eligible for the New York Swings grant in particular, but other grants as well. Most of these ask for matching funds. So the town has to say, we are as a town willing to pay for some of it, and then you're eligible for the other grants. And then I think this last part is really important, particularly for anyone who thinks they don't like this or don't like that. That once the referendum passes, and it will, we are going to form working groups for all the different pieces. So, if you are really into the swimming pool and you say, it should have this layout, or if you're really into the trails and you want them to run in this way and have this angle and this turn, you're going to have many more opportunities to have your own input into how these things end up in the end. So, as I started with, we as a community have been talking about this my entire life. There are things people may like, things people may not like. It's time to move forward. We just think, you could wait until the end of time, but the garbage can that's out there, I noticed this when I came in here today, is literally the same garbage can as when I was 5 years old. It's time to move forward with stuff. So thank you all for coming. We're gonna turn the lights on now. If the whole task force can come up. We're gonna have a Q&A. I believe the way that Melanie wants to do it is if you have a question, come up to the front, and we're gonna hand you a microphone and try to answer it as best we can.
Everybody, my name is Pete Kagan. I own the property on the eastern border of the field. I want to preface what I'm saying with the fact that I fully support Andy Lee Field being improved. I have a couple questions for the board here. Are you considering fencing in the property?
It's not something we talked about a lot. It's something important to you, certainly something that can be discussed.
There really are safety concerns. Many people don't know the eastern side of the property for many years has been a gathering place for kids to not be seen. There's a lot of drinking and drugs that happens there. There was a tent village that went up last summer. So I do have concerns and I hope that's considered. And the trail that goes through the Cumbies, yes, there's a lot of problems that happen back there. We're constantly monitoring. The second question is, have you considered?
Just to interject for 1 second, go ahead. Yeah, this is one of the main reasons that we want to have the youth center in the middle. And Patrick can talk to this more if he likes, but the idea of these sight lines, something I never really thought about. But when I drop my 12-year-old off at the youth center there, if he goes back to the end of the field and plays tennis or plays basketball, he's completely unsupervised. And so by putting the youth center in a place where you can see the entire campus, it changes the whole dynamic and hopefully will address some of those issues. You want to add anything to that?
And then the second question is, have you considered splitting up the facilities? I know there was a plan many years ago for a pool at the Como property. Have you ever thought about putting some facilities there?
We talked about it early on and just decided it wasn't the right thing to do. I think there was a reason why we didn't do it. But we just, again, we want the community to come here and enjoy the space together.
That makes sense. I suggest maybe thinking about it more because it could break up the traffic and multiple facilities. And obviously I have an incentive for that. All right. Thank you very much.
Again, if anyone with questions, please come up here.
So I just wanted to say, I've been here for 25 years and I think this is a great idea. I really do. But I do want to show you one thing. Can you go back?
Which one do you want? The one with the hiking trails too?
Yeah, that one.
Hold on, getting there.
So I just want you to know that This is my house. And this is my mother's house.
They stay,
What?
they stay.
Yeah, they're staying. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, again, I think this is a great idea. But I'm gonna take a little bit of issue in terms of you guys reaching out and talking to everybody, because I only heard about this like. Those 5 houses there, like, and me and my mom have 2. Is anyone else here from Simmons Drive? Yes, but you're a little bit.
So
It counts.
if I could address that for a moment, first, apologies for anyone that we didn't reach out to. It was very difficult to find them.
I live there.
We did actually have people from Simmons Court come to us,
Simmons Drive.
Simmons Drive early on, and we're quite concerned. Because honestly, one of the things in the early month or 2 that we first got together, we thought about an entranceway coming through Simmons Drive to get to the field. Because at the time, we thought we would be building things in this back area where the trails are gonna go. Oh, wetlands, nothing's gonna be built there. And so we very quickly said, there's absolutely no way we're gonna do that. And then the second part where we think we're trying to be as good a neighbors as possible. Right now, you have the skate park and the youth center essentially right next to your home and right next to Simmons Court. We know when that was built, there were all sorts of issues with sound. We explicitly moved all of that to what's the south part. And so we basically said, you know what, they're not going to disturb the people on that border because it's a cemetery. And so we moved it away from them. That was the goal there. We really tried to help.
Okay, so, cool. I just want to say a couple of things. So now that I am aware of this, I would like to be part of this committee. Because this is the big committee making these huge decisions. This is my backyard over there, and I'm just gonna be really like obnoxious and talk about my wonderful pool that I have right there. And so I'm a little concerned that this is gonna be really like, you know.
For you, I get it.
It's gonna, but listen, no, you stop talking. So I think that it's a great idea for the community. I do. Absolutely. I'm not gonna say that it's not, but I am concerned about things that are gonna happen right there. And when you were talking about the kids that are in danger when they're at the youth center, that's not where the stuff goes on. It's in the pavilion.
We know.
Right. No, but you said the youth center. So if you put a pavilion right there in the front, that means me in my pool, I'm gonna be sitting there and the kids are gonna be smoking and it's all gonna be right there, right? While I'm in my backyard. So that's what happens.
May I address some of your concerns?
Absolutely.
Okay, so one of the things I just want to touch base with, when we talked about that initial focus group, myself and a couple of kids from the youth center actually walked through your whole neighborhood and we dropped flyers off at everybody's door. We've also done a lot of, stuff on social media and things like that. I just wanted to know that, like, I physically paper that I put on every store and things like that. As for the pavilion, I know that's a big concern for you because that was the same concern for the gentleman that lives in the back corner there where the one is now. But that's what brings us back to the part of taking the youth center from where it is and relocating it, because what that does is it gives me the ability to be able to see what's going on there. I've tried to work with the Woodstock Police Department to remedy a lot of the situations that are going on under the pavilion and things like that. There are stories that I'm sure you know of, that I know of, horror stories and things like that that we could share. But to not get into that, as of right now, the group of kids that we have, give me just 1 second, the group of kids that we have there, and the way that we've been trying to stay on top of everything, that is a big concern. We want to make sure that the neighbors are comfortable in all of this and everything, and that was a big part of relocating where we were. What it did is it pulls us away from that area there. It's a little bit quieter for you, and it also gives us a better line of sight to take care of those situations. And in working with the Woodstock Police Department and other departments in the town, it'll be our goal to make sure that there are no concerns like that, because right now, with summer camp coming, you'll see all types of graffiti going on back there, all types of interaction in that back pavilion that's very unsupervised. So the point is that would be like a new community garden area. You have a playground there. You're gonna have, by having the walking trails there, you're bringing more parents in, more people from the community that are able to indirectly kind of govern that facility. And also, we need to make sure that there is no smoking, no drinking and things like that going on the properties, especially with some of the laws that have been passed to make things a little bit easier and stuff like that. I've pushed for that for myself. So hopefully we can, put some signage up and things like that, that allow me to contact the police department, and then they can enforce those laws to make it for you to have a safer environment where your home is and to be able to enjoy your property like you intend to.
Yeah, I mean, usually I didn't think you're saying, and I think, I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it, and I'm not saying there shouldn't be a pavilion, I think it's a great idea, I think having a farmer's market, I think it's all great. I just would like some information in terms of like what it does to that house value, yeah, I'm worried about my own thing. And about, can you guys like guarantee some trees? I mean, can there be something between us and them, because I'm concerned if you're talking about this pavilion, there's these vans that are coming up. That's
I think
you know what I mean?
very
So,
valid,
those things,
very valid,
right?
and again, once the referendum passes, we'll have these working groups and everything, and you will have full input. I can't guarantee like every single thing, but obviously, we want to make everyone happy with this as much as we possibly can.
And I hope you go like all the way through 3. I think it's amazing. I really do. Because we weren't involved in these, and whatever, you guys sent out flyers, but it has been 2 years. And because I'm hearing about this like fourthhand, I'm hoping that as we move forward, you guys can bring us in for more input. Please.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Please.
The project initially started off just as the youth center, but then as we started to meet with people and talk more with the community, we realized that there was just a need for something bigger than just the community center or just the youth center. So, yeah.
So next question.
Well, you have to for the people on Zoom.
Are there people on?
There are, yeah.
Okay, before coming to the meeting, I just did a little math. My initial impression of the project was that it was entirely off scale to our town. In terms of the size of our town and our budgets. Yes, okay, here we go. So I looked at the census for 2020, and the town is basically 6,200 people. Of those people, 10% are living below poverty line, the official poverty line. And of those people, 11.3% are under the age of 18. So if you do a little math, you will see the cost per child, according to the census numbers, with about 705 children in Woodstock, would be 14,600 per child, not including maintenance costs or interest or any bonds. The cost, not by year, but over time, for the current population would be $1,700 for the taxpayers. I find the whole thing way off scale. I'd like to see a renovated youth center. The other sort of kicker about the youth center is it hasn't been maintained for a very long time. If you don't maintain a building, it falls apart. And in the bigger picture, if you check out the onto student enrollment, the number of children in the whole community continues to decline. And when my kids were little, we used to play Little League baseball here, and the town could have a Little League team of its own. Now, both soccer and baseball are, including towns like Auburn, Shawinigan, because they don't have enough children. And part of the reason people give for doing this is to attract, quote, young people. But if the taxes go up as they would have to, that would be a disincentive to move here. So I would like to see the whole thing scaled down and go back to renovating the youth center and making a decent facility and spending money on maintenance. So we don't end up with a building that looks like that.
So one of the current things you mentioned is the kids that attend there from the Iowa School District. I just wanted to know that the homeschooling numbers have increased kind of dramatically around the area and things like that. Also, yes, absolutely. And then if you take into consideration the size of the youth center right now, you can go by there on a certain day, and I was gonna wait for this to become a question, but I just want to address it. You'll go by there one day and you may see nobody outside, but that's not saying that there's nobody inside. That's not saying that 10 kids have signed in and are walking into town to go get something to eat. I have documentation of numbers that date back to 2004 to current. We do daily sign-in sheets that I can show you hard copies of. I have monthly numbers. In the wintertime, things get a little slower because of the sports that go on out in the area and things like that. Some of our kids actually get dropped off by the bus right outside the door there and get picked up by their parents, because if they can't make it there on time, that's a safe place for them. It's nice to know that there's, 50, 60, kids coming. No, this isn't just towards you. I just wanna make it clear to everybody. You'll go by on a Friday night and that place is packed. Today we had about 26 kids when I came over here.
But I'm just saying, you have 750 kids in the town of Woodstock.
No, I got you, but I also want you to know a lot of this, we have a lot of kids here, and I'm not saying that we should flip the bill for other kids in other communities, but we get a lot of kids that come in from the Alameda School District that have now made friends with these kids, so they come here, and maybe they're outside of the taxpayer barrier, but this facility is so important for the community. And again, you'll go by on a Friday night, you'll see 50, 60 kids running around, manhunt, going into town, getting food. They're providing, they're helping businesses locally here by buying food and doing things like that, going out to restaurants. Now, you would think like, oh, these kids aren't spending money like that. Trust me, their parents are giving them money. They're having sit-down dinners at Joshua's, and that's what
I wish they were talking about that. No, not Joshua, I'm sorry.
Real quick, Woodstock member 54, my kids grew up here, we're in Kingston, so we live in Woodstock, but my kids go to the Kingston, went to Kingston school, so just because she has the numbers for the kids in Woodstock, there are many kids who live in Woodstock, but are in the Kingston school district, so it's not just.
But my last point though about that, I just want to make this one point. When you go by there and you don't see all those big numbers out there, and there's 1 or 2 kids sitting inside that building, okay? That place means more to them sometimes than we could even wrap our heads around. And that's the importance of having something like that. A place where a kid may have something going on in his home, or there's things that are going on in their social life where just that couple hours of being at the youth center and being in there and having that safe space means so much to them.
They have you, Patrick.
I appreciate that, but I want this whole project to last way beyond my years and do something positive for our future and leave something that we can look back and be proud of as a community. And I thank you for allowing me to be a part of this community and work with your children, and it's been a pleasure.
My question is, what is the contingency plan if the referendum passes? What happens if it goes beyond the 11 million? Because costs go up, they do not go down.
I think I'll bring up our master planners to answer this one. I'm not a construction expert. Obviously, things can happen like that, but I'm gonna let them earn their money and you can answer that.
Thanks, man. So it's a very valid point, and especially as, as we hear in the news on a daily basis, tariffs and on and off and all the other stuff. One of the things that we do in our project planning on the accounting side is build in contingency percentages right now, and also for escalation. We know that
To do like a 10%?
it's a factor of, yes, between 7 and 10% for design contingency, for construction contingency, and also for escalation. Those are all built into the numbers that you saw. Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we've what you saw tonight is kind of a snapshot, but we have a much more granular. It would bore everyone in the room to death to go through it, but each one of those spaces and places and items had a direct correlation to a cost. And that's the aggregate of what you're seeing tonight, with contingencies and fees and escalation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, just one other thing is that, when we're talking about it's gonna cost $8 or it's gonna cost $20, whatever it is for a $500,000 house. We also have to look at the staffing, the maintenance in the future. Of course, that's not in those numbers. And before we go and vote on something like this, we have to think of the ongoing costs, what it's gonna do to our taxes, until the end of our lives.
So I think it's a very fair point. Again, the piece that the town would pay for is essentially, in 1A, it's really the youth center, and 1B and the senior center. The additional costs for these are not particularly significant. When we did our operational plan, the real cost comes in is if we build this indoor pool. That's a massive undertaking. And I don't think there's any way we can do that unless we can get donations that can help fund that, which by the way is how Hartsville did it. The donor there not only paid for capital costs, but also for operating costs. But for the 1A and 1B that we're asking the town to do, we don't think there are significant operating costs that increase there.
Thank you.
I have a child. Every bit of it, I could not be more appreciative for what it is in the community, but I actually just wanted to say something about the amount of the members. I feel like that's who really, when I think of Woodstock, I really think of my generation, and on a place where they're also, they are still part of the community. My child is in the same space as the people that I grew up looking up to and loving. And so I just want to add that the focus on the youth center, that what actually brings me the most hope is the way that there's all age groups being considered in this plan. So that's all I need.
Thank you.
You can ask your question. Thank you. Very good presentation, Dan. I appreciate that. I am focused on the loss of open space. I think that is a concern. I use Andy Leaf Field, and it's a spectacular view of Overlook, which is rare around here. And to stand there and look up at Overlook and enjoy the open space, that would be lost. And I don't like seeing that. The youth center has an excellent location where it is. I think it's excellent. I support building a new building on the current site. And I think that's what should be done. The retail development, I think is not appropriate for public land. You talk about Ithaca. Ithaca is a city of 33,000 people. And I don't understand why you would use that as an example of something to have here on Andy Leaf Field. To have the retail on public land is inappropriate altogether, I think. And at that scale, I don't know why you even use that example. Operating costs you didn't talk about. You use Arkville as an example. In 2022, they spent about $740,000 operating costs. And I'm not sure the town wants to take on that expense to add it to our tax bill, $740,000 a year operating costs for a municipal pool. I think you should work more on the tax bill costs. You wanted to leave people with you mentioned $1.40 a day, I think, and that's what you want people to walk away with. On my tax bill for the $3 million library bond, I'm paying $132 a year. So that's a $3 million bond. I could multiply that by, I could get up to $500 a year for just your phase one on my tax bill. And I think people should look at their tax bills and see what the library bond is and maybe multiply that by 3, and that would be a more realistic cost. It's not $1.40 a day. And finally, if this trash can has been there for so long, that's indicative of, you know, the way things are maintained here. And we should do something about that. And I think if we did something about that, then we wouldn't necessarily be talking about such a big plan.
Thank you. Joseph, did you want to say that?
I just want to go back to those remarks about the Senior Citizen Center. When I came to the committee, I was enthusiastic about the notion of having a seniors dedicated center. And so I looked at the social science and medical literature. I'm a retired pediatrician, and there's ample social science data and medical data to support that a senior citizen center in a town or city of any size promotes healthy aging. It mitigates isolation issues that plague senior citizens. It can be used to support healthcare, for instance, flu vaccines, and blood pressure checks on patients. It's a safe, accessible space that's outside their home, which is important for mental health. It reduces caregiver burdens, which are, really onerous in many families. It promotes community cohesion. It presents educational opportunities for senior citizens. It encourages them to participate in outdoor activities. And it's a safe space in emergency situations when there are power outages and storms. And with all these things in mind, it strengthens communities, especially a community like Woodstock, where probably 20% of the citizens are over 65. Thank you. Well, it's controversial because there's conflicting data on the percentage of citizens in Woodstock in the 2020 census who are over 65. So I'm going to say 20%. I've seen 17% and I've seen 38%. So anyway, sizable number.
I'd like to interject a word about open space that John mentioned, because this has come up quite a bit. And in fact, when our task force started this work, we had an actual prejudice to ourselves to put the buildings in the back. It wasn't until we found out that most of the back is wetlands and that wouldn't be feasible that we ultimately ended up with a configuration that we're tonight. But this field is sacred to any and all of us that have been in Woodstock for any amount of time. I'll speak for myself. I struck out in 1960, my first dad died in the it was a little traumatic, it cost me some in therapy years later, but it still pays dividends in terms of my love for this property in this field. Among my last wishes are to sprinkle some of my ashes behind the 3-point line on the left wing basketball court. My brother Rennie, who will let you know, feels the same way about the field. But change can be hard, and a byproduct of change is that we will have to reconfigure it. We happen to be doing it in such a manner as to increase open space instead of diminish it in the aggregate. That comes from our master planning, but it will be reconfigured.
Mike Mulvey, town resident for 30 years. I'm also a retired operating engineer. And before I speak to the loss of open space, I do want to just speak to the fiscal responsibility that has to be attended to in contingency plans when considering this, because not only are we likely to have construction cost overruns, but I can tell you as an operating engineer that maintenance is very expensive on infrastructure. Okay, and I understand that the indoor pool, it's off the scale. So where's that money going to come from? But I mean, just adding more infrastructure. Okay, where are the contingencies? How many maintenance people are we going to add just for that, aside from program people? I mean, personally, I'd like to see some improvement done, but I'd like to see more money going into programs and less going into infrastructure, especially since we've got the debt burden of this new library, is right there. So we've got that hanging over our head. And for me, the loss of the open space at a time when we're losing that library in the middle of town is painful. So I think, I'm not saying that this shouldn't happen. I think it's an overreach, totally from my perspective. But be prepared for the fact that people are not going to understand why we have to build all this infrastructure in the front of this, blocking off the field more or less, and how it's going to feel. So that's going to be an emotional problem. But I want to see contingencies on what this thing is really going to cost to run it. And that's important, okay? Because we're coming into a situation which, once we go down this road, we're going to be committed to it. We're going to have to pay for it. So I just want you all to consider that. Thank you.
Hi, I have several questions. The first one is, 2 years ago, there was like $400,000 in the kitty. Was that the number? To start looking towards working for the youth center? These are numbers that I've just that have kind of been flying around.
$200,000 that Bill had allocated for the, start.
To start scoping the youth center, but so that's 2 years ago. So then, how long before the young people in our community actually have an upgrade in their system? Because at the moment, we're looking at 2 years to scope and then barreling down this like kind of, yeah, it seems like a little bit excessive. We all want to see the youth center have some like, some, you know best. I also wanna make, so that's a big question, so let's.
When?
Yeah.
I mean,
When, if this.
I would love to see this project, if the referendum were passed, I would love to see construction begin as soon as the camp ends this September.
And for what, just the youth center building?
We all for 1A and 1B. That's, all we're talking about here is 1A and 1B.
Okay.
That's what the town is doing. Everything else is contingent on us getting. If tomorrow, someone said that they were gonna donate $30 million to do the whole thing, then we would try to do the whole thing at once. That's probably
So
very
that would
unlikely.
still be years before the kids would have a space.
The goal, and I think this was an important part of our consideration, is to try to make it so that if we start in September, it's done in time for next year's camp.
And so what happens for the winter while this is all happening?
That's
The
the-
last building to be moved would be where they are right now?
Exactly. And again, the pool too, the pool's a similar thing. If that pool would stay there until, or if we get money to build a new one. The youth center will stay there until the youth center is built. It's actually one of the really interesting things where some folks have said, well, why don't you just renovate the youth center? Why don't you just build a new youth center where it is? Well, if you do that, you lose, a year of kids having no space to go in.
Okay, and then, so next question, or thing that I wanted to kind of bring to this community, because I'm looking into a room that is reflective of those statistics you said before. And I was born and raised in this town, and I'm technically an aging human, but like no town can, like if we don't think regeneratively, then this town's just gonna die. We're all gonna die. Like, by the way, we all know this, we're growing older, we're going to die. But this town, it has like sort of skated on old stories. It's skated through the last 55 years of my life on a story of something that never happened here. And like, everybody's gonna die. So like, we do need to think about young people. I wish that my kid and the kids that he grew up with felt like they could live here in this town. And so when people start freaking out because it's going to like constrict their existence to give so much to the young people, and then we get statistics, which every statistic about every single thing regarding Woodstock is wrong. Because we have a massive, massive, massive amount of displacement here. A lot of the kids that come here to the youth center can't live in the town they were born in. And there's people in this room who've moved here from who knows where. It's okay. We all are here. We're a welcome community. But like when you start statisticizing in a way that only covers your own ass, you're actually missing a massive amount of people in our community who are not being counted, cared for, or honored in any way because they've been displaced and now blink, blink, blink. All of that context goes out the window. So like a lot of families that are not welcome to be here because they can't afford it, or because it's just so easy to brush them off because the elementary school enrollment is going down, what do we end up with but a dying town? So like, I really applaud you for what you're doing here, and thank you for helping my family grow up with somebody that out of the trust when they went to town. And like, let's think about the first most important thing, which is to have our young people safe in a place that Pat and the young people, like I wish the young people were a little more invited into this conversation because it should be up to them what they want and have to have.
Yeah.
That's like important. That's important. This should be their town, they should feel ownership. That's really important.
Thanks, Rachel.
Think of this project as growing a life preserver at the town. A nail in the coffin is the potential closure of the elementary school. If you're parents of a young family and there's no recreational destination in the town, the towns you're looking at, there's no elementary school, you're gonna cross that town off your sheet immediately. So this is a life preserver for the town. It makes it an attractive destination for people. The closure of the elementary school is really a grave possibility. So.
Having a little debate back there who follows Rachel, because that's a tough act to follow. I come from a different perspective, which is my goal and my work here in town has been about open space. I feel like that's the one thing you can't replace. You can always replace a building, you can always do all kinds of other things, but once you lose it, it's gone. So I have a few points and a few questions. I think that most people who are drawn to Woodstock are drawn for its open spaces and scenic vistas. Our lands are our most valuable assets and what sets us apart from other communities. It's what really matters here and something we can't afford to lose. Auntie Lee's open fields with its mountain views are a gem in the center of town. We are not a rich suburb. We are a real mix of extremes on the income scale. While the town may not be carrying a large debt on a bond, our library is. That's on our tax bills. It's likely that in the not too distant future, we will be paying much more for emergency services with the dire loss of volunteers in the community. And that's something that's all going to show up in our tax bills. And if I have to choose what I'm going to spend money on, it's going to be that. It's not just the construction costs of these proposals that must be considered. It's the cost of staffing, maintenance, energy, repairs, and insurance that will appear on our yearly bills. So some of my questions are, do you have statistics on the youth center usage? I know that's science, but how many kids actually use the facilities? Is it busier on the weekdays or the weekends, in the summer or in the winter? Is the number 25? Is it 50? Is it 100? What does its busiest day look like? I'm not saying you do, I'm just saying it should be proportional to the use that it experiences. I've talked to a lot of people. My kids are now grown. Never went to the youth center. I talked to a lot of my friends. Now, for whatever reason, they didn't use it. So the question is, we need it, but how much of it do we need? How big does it need to be?
Okay, so as for your numbers, like I said, we date back to 2004. We keep records of all the signings daily. It's a daily signing sheet. Just typically due to availability of time constraint with school and things like that, our Fridays and Saturdays are probably our busiest days. We are closed on Mondays, and during the winter months, typically when school goes back into session, winter sports pick up. The kids are getting acclimated by going back to school and things like that. So we may hit like a little bit of a lull in our numbers around January and February. But as the weather warms back up, due to the fact that we don't have any real wide open interior space for any activities like basketball and things like that, we were utilizing the Woodstock Elementary School. But their program was too filled up for us this year. So now I was told that we could use it in February, then I was told let's do it until the 1st of April. So what that does is it looking forward to doing these things, playing basketball with the weather's here in New York, you know, how it's 20 degrees outside, snow, rain, things like that. So when we don't have that interior space for the kids, they tend to go to Kingston and they go to the YMCA. That's where we lose a lot of the kids there. Also with the sports and activities going on and things like that. As the weather's warmed up recently, Our Friday and Saturday numbers are 50+ kids. Last Friday, we had 65 kids sign in. Sunday, we had, I think it was 8 kids. Today, we have 26 kids over there. That's what brings me back to the whole thing of the availability of the youth center being there and having that space, whether it's for 60+ kids or whether it's for 6 kids. That place for some of those kids. Sometimes it's not so much in the numbers as much as it is into affecting the lives that we do on a daily basis. When I first started, I've been in this field since '97. I started at St. Cabrini Home, and one of the things that was mentioned to me is, Acker, you know, you're going to be in this field for a long time, and if you can just touch one kid, you can change one life in your whole career, you've made a difference.
Okay, I'm gonna agree with all of that. I'm an educator, and I know
Yes, ma'am.
exactly how you feel. However, I was mostly talking about proportionality.
Gotcha.
Okay, so you know, if we need a facility for 200 kids, if we need a facility for 100 kids, that's just something to keep
Yep.
in mind.
So
And that's something I hope you're looking at.
with absolutely. So the new footprint right now, we have the house that's over there, and I'm not quite sure what the square footage is, maybe around 1,600 square feet or something like that, including the upstairs. There's just space, especially lots of site that keep it safe, you know, they're going through puberty and all types of things like that. So a lot of the kids that are in relationships are like, oh, could we go upstairs and hang out? I'm like, no, you can't, you know, like I need to keep an eye on you. And I need to make sure that, you know, that we're keeping you safe and your parents are happy with dropping you off here and things like that. So having this new space, it's all on one footprint, on one level was what I had asked for. Talk to the kids, music room, computer room, media room, things like that. Things that breathe Woodstock. You know what I mean? Things that this town is built on and things of that nature. And again, I'm not a Woodstock taxpayer. I live in Kingston, but I've lived there my whole life. I've been a part of this town for 17 years. And even though I don't pay taxes, I still feel like a member of the community. And I would never try to endorse or back something up that I didn't think would benefit the kids. What you guys decide to do with the whole project, you know, I'm always in support of growth and things like that. Part of the open space, which I agree, I love it here. I love coming down the road and seeing the mountain and everything like that. We're California quarry. But one of the things, if you look, you know, because it's been brought up a couple of times, so I just want to address it. We actually are gaining more open space, you know, by putting the buildings in the front here. If you think right now, we have a guardrail over here, we have a community center here, we have this little rinky-dink pool that nobody actually gets to use except for the summer camp program for 7 weeks. So the whole front is kind of blocked off already. By adding some of these buildings, it just brings a little bit more life into it, and then hopefully it allows people to want to spend more time here and you know, a more of a congregating area, things like that, for all ages.
Okay, you answered a lot more than
I'm
I
sorry.
asked, but thank you. This is just my last point. Okay. So this whole thing started, my understanding is that the Youth Center Task Force mission was to upgrade. You've gone far beyond that. I understand. Sometimes I have dreams too. This is all on our dime, and this is all on our property. This is all community-owned land. So I'm just wondering, since you were asked originally to replace or fix, which I understand you can't do, the youth center, is there a plan to do just that? To replace just the youth center where it currently is? That would just cost a whole lot less. It would solve the youth center issue, which was originally what the plan was before this expanded into something maybe a little larger than what most people had envisioned. So we need to see, this is my request, we need to see a detailed plan and cost for the youth center that is on the same site and that takes a realistic look at its current and potential use. Woodstockers need to have that choice and a real sense of the continuing tax burden when it comes time to vote on spending our money.
Thank you.
Just did want to reiterate that the plan for the youth center and skate park only would be 1A of a. And I also wanted to add that if the youth center be raised and rebuilt in its current location, we'd be looking at, for our architect, 12 to 14 months where the kids have no place to go.
Hi, my name is Daniel Swain. I'm actually not a Woodstock resident. I live in Hurley, right over the border, but we do consider Woodstock our town, so I think there's a lot of people who are like that. I do want to say the person who said that we need to do more to make Woodstock and the surrounding areas more affordable, I really agree with. I think anyone who's at this meeting should also be looking into what we're doing to build more housing in the community. Obviously, that's not the topic here, but I just want to give a shout out to the woman who talked about that. I will say I have paid a lot of attention to the dwindling school population. I have a 5-year-old and 2-year-old daughter, and I do understand that this is happening. There's a lot of reasons. But one of the reasons is that we are not doing enough to attract families here. And Woodstock, as we know, is getting much older, and with great respect to the seniors in this community who are an incredibly important part. Young people and families bring energy, they bring investment, they bring creativity. And if you go out on Main Street in Woodstock, it is a thriving town. Why? Because it's a tourist town, right? We need it to be more than a tourist town. And if you want families like ours here, I'm not really, my wife is from Willow, but if you want to continue to get people to move here and not Catskill or Kingston or any of the other places, and we are in a competition for those families, and they will bring the new life to the community. So obviously, there's lots of reasons someone might quibble with this, and I do understand the tax burden. I want to be respectful that for some people it will be very difficult. But to me, we have to keep investing in our public facilities. And I have to say, I came here to Woodstock and I didn't know it that well, and I came out here and I played tennis and I played basketball and I went out on that playground. I was like, really? This is the best we can do? So there's a lot of improvements that we can make, and a lot of them are here at the youth center, and there's the piece for the senior center, and all of it is, as I think the task force has said, about moving forward and building the next generation of Woodstock. So I'm very supportive of that. Thank you.
I would like to see a new youth center built really fast. I think like waiting for another like year is like a waste of. I think that you can use this community center. You don't have to, like, you keep saying like, where are the kids gonna go? They'll have no place to go. You can set up computers in here. They can share it with the seniors. They can cook. They can use the TV. Journey wants to put the kids, teach the kids how to use the, community TV center. She wants to teach them. They can use the school gym. Like, you have to be creative. You have to be able to use what we have with the kids. You keep pushing them off. They don't have Mac, computers. You don't buy anything for them. There needs to be investment in those kids.
So this year, we have Brandon. If you recall, a few moments ago, I mentioned about the use of the indoor gymnasium at the school, the unavailability of that. By moving us over here to the community center, which is an area that's used by the entire public, trying to leave things over here of value and stuff like that. I'm not saying that things would disappear, but things could be used, the way that they're not supposed to. Now you're just going to take them from that building there, squeeze them into this space here, and hope for the best. Or, as Ben mentioned earlier, this building is used considerably. There's a lot of events here. The movies, all types of things that go on in the evening, dances and stuff like that that are over here. So that takes away from the use for the youth. Also, I understand, but as we all know, everything takes time. And then my other concern was that I had addressed, because we talked about rebuilding it in that spot right there, is the fact that that area, like this whole field, is built on a big water table, which would be addressed in the whole project. The building is in, falling apart condition. We have one of my staff, their foot went through the floor recently, just as a small example. And it gets us away from the road. Also, what it does by relocating us out here, again, it provides those lines of sight that we were talking about, and some of the concerns in the community about the kids. Give me one moment, please. About the kids being safe and things like that out there. So, well, that will be decided by the town board. So.
Next question.
Rebecca Turmo, third generation to use Sandy Lee Field. Third generation to play in that park. My children played there, I played there. My children and I were both utilized the youth center in our time. It's not really bragging rights, but something often overlooked was, we were 3 generations of single parents raising children. And a better youth center and a more inclusive park area is really helpful to single mothers. And I don't think they really talked about that. And like Peter, like Rachel, I grew up, this is, it was difficult. It was difficult to grow up in Woodstock. I'm sure it's difficult now. There are issues when it comes to drug use. We know that. I lost friends. They lost friends. The youth center was a grounding force to possibly make sure that your children had a safe space where they could talk about their problems and perhaps the addiction bug would not hit them. And that's a reality that I don't think that we talk about enough. The idea that we have seniors up here and we have a more inclusive for seniors and youth is incredibly important. And that's one of the things that I'm really excited to see is an emphasis of possibly bringing them together. You can look at the statistics when you are bringing older people closer to younger people are getting a more grounded effect. Older people are finding new life. I'm a taxpayer for 30 years. I love my little town. This is one of those things that's a no-brainer for me. You want to add to my tax bill, you will. I also kind of resent the fact that people think that we're closing off all open space in Woodstock by expanding this area. Do we not remember we have 76 acres at Como? We have various other parts of the town. You have the Xena cornfield, which is the Land Conservancy has to look up at the mountain. This is for the people, the living people with stuff. We can still enjoy the mountain, but we can work together as a community and perhaps save each other. If we don't have that, our community will die. If we don't have an elementary school, our community will die. We cannot live just with tourism. I run a store. I'm telling you, that's not what I want. I want a community where people are interacting together. It is worth my dollars on my tax bill. That's all.
And as far as open space goes, I know we had that up on the slide. It was very, very small print. But per our architect, the current open space is about 133,000 square feet. And with this proposal, it would be 151,000 square feet. So I just want to make that point because I know it was very hard to read.
Hey, I'm Andrew Cohen. I'm a new resident here and over the past couple of years, I live right down the street. I have 2 young kids. I'm really glad to hear that last woman speak about this community. You don't find this community anywhere. It's the reason why a lot of us came here. And it takes a village. We have lots of families taking care of each other's kids, promoting each other's businesses, hoping to thrive, hoping to live here, retire here, you know, be here the rest of our lives, have our kids come back here. It's a future that you don't necessarily see right now being in this town. And I have to say, you know, we talk about the kids and the, you know, older generations, but you take care of the kids, you take care of the parents. You know, we have groups of families taking care of my kids, I take care of other kids. We're driving kids all around, hour, 45 minutes away, Hunter, Tannersville, Saugerties, Kingston. There's no indoor safe space. Open space includes inside too. We're a town that gets hammered with weather. our kids need a place to stay, school buses need places to drop our kids off, you know. No parent, no working parent, you know, and we work right in town, no two parent working family wants to end their day at 3 o'clock because there's nowhere for their kids to go. You know, that's a really hard life to live, and I look at all these people who are a lot older than me, and I want to be here. And I want my kids to be standing here talking in 50 years, being like, what the fuck happened back then? And we can't come here. I think it's amazing that everyone here, you're not even a resident here, you take care of all these families, and you have been here forever and want this too.
Not that old.
We're the same age, basically, and, you know, it means a lot, so if you take care of the kids and you give a place for the older generation to be, then you're just, this is a once in a generation, but it creates all these different generations, and we don't have to leave. We don't have to ever call another place home. And I think this is a really special opportunity just to do that. So thank you for everything you've done as a volunteer. You know, you gotta think about this, they're all volunteers. For 2 years volunteering to make this happen.
Thank you so much. I've been asked to read. I have to read a question from Laura Ritchie, who's on home. Okay.
Hi, I grew up here as well with Ben. And there's one of our teachers and a couple other people he grew up with here. I think you guys did a great job. I remember coming when you first started and I had some questions and concerns. I've talked to you guys. I was part of the group where you did talk to housing and you talked to the community there. That was a focus group. So I was there, I saw that. Yeah, I was a part of that. So it did happen. And I think you really listened and you responded and you changed your plan, even when it comes to the part A, B, 2, 3. So I appreciate that. And thank you for your volunteers. The one thing I wanted to mention is that there is more, I mean, significantly more defined in zoning is open space, which is the 6.3 acres of land that's gonna have pass-through that none of us were accessing prior. So I think you're forgetting about that land. Because that is an extra 6.3. And the other thing is, I don't understand what you're talking about, I love you, but when we go out into rec field, which I broke my left thumb in that doing farm league, when you look over from that side, or even in the middle, you can still see the mountain. So I'm not sure what you're talking about, that you're gonna miss it, or it's gone away somehow. There's no buildings on that side to block it. The building will be behind you. And what was the other point? The one thing I am a little worried and concerned, because I think you have to think about the future, is with these programs, especially new buildings, new things happening. I think it's important to think about that he needs a living wage, an assistant needs a living wage. Whoever's doing the swimming need a living wage that can live in this town and also have that as their job. So I think we need to think about programming in terms of people need to be paid to do a good job. So if you get into this, and we have to commit to it, we need people to be able to do the programming and be paid to do that fairly. So I think if you could maybe adjust the budget when it comes to the 2 and 3 or something, to think about that. And as far as the pavilion goes, that's not a commercial. That is just like the parking lot, but better. That's all. You gotta roof that and maybe some wood, and that would be great, and some real parking, except for that is half parking. So people are parking all over the place, it's crazy, yes. So having a farmer's market and pavilion is excellent. Plus that pavilion will be used for a lot of other activities, like some of the festivals we wanted to have. space and no coverage, because summertime is hurricane time. Thank you.
I'm just gonna read a question first from Councilwoman Ricky, who couldn't be here tonight, but is watching it on Zoom. Phase one looks incomplete. I can't see the screen, but I believe the plan is for the youth center to go where the ball field is, somewhere over along that line. So shouldn't one A include the work to put the ball fields in a new location? Otherwise, aren't you losing a ball field if people only vote for one A? Before you answer that, though, I guess I'm getting a little older, maybe my skin's getting a little thinner. To the gentleman from Hurley, you know, with infrastructure, we can always do a little better. Every day something breaks, every day something has to be repaired, rebuilt, replaced. And I think we've done a pretty good job. Look at this beautiful building. When I first ran for office, this was a ramshackle building. Look at it now. Sorry, Janine and John, if you're still here, I know you got married here. But I will any day put my record of spending on infrastructure up against the last 3 Hurley supervisors. So maybe they'll help us with this. Thank you.
Ed, you wanna,
Yeah, so there are currently 2 ball fields that exist on the existing NAV field right now. The youth center impacts a corner of one of the ball fields, but preserves in its entirety the other ball field. So it would impact a small portion of the existing ball field, but we will maintain an existing ball field at all times.
are there other questions from the audience?
It's been a little late, so I don't have to go over that. I guess, I mean, it sounds really exciting in a lot of ways. I heard that you already covered grants, so I'm gonna go back and listen to that, but I am somewhat aware of some of the other neighboring communities getting grants through the county and then into the villages and towns for millions of dollars, and probably smaller sized communities. So I don't know if it would cover everything, but and let's see, I'm excited about programming also. It's definitely also like community members talking about how much we need a park, and I think there's a community garden, the senior center and the youth center. And I've heard some elderly community members mentioning that they feel, some of them, maybe not all of them hopefully, but feel somewhat isolated, and they don't know how to reach out for help, and they don't know how to access the help that they need. So maybe this would be, you know, helpful for them. And also some of those same people have tremendous skill and spent many years working in you know, helping elderly people, helping disabled people, mental health, and various, you know, places that usually were not in Woodstock, or some of them might be, but like I'm thinking of more like Kingston and stuff, where they had really some really wonderful programs. And at this point, some of that was shut down, and some of these people are here, and I'm sure that they would maybe really enjoy being a part of something like that again. I myself would love to see all of what was mentioned, but I also have a special focus on young adults, because I feel like young adults often get overlooked, and also young adults who with disabilities in particular. I would love to see more like programming for young adults as well. Like, you know, I mean, Woodstock's a music and arts town. You know, we also know for crafts and you know, furniture building, all kinds of things. We have a history here of some really wonderful, you know, talented artisans. It would be great to explore more of that with people of all different ages, but and for also for like younger people to be able to be mentored, find mentorship opportunities with some of the older people in the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One thing I just want to address a couple of things, and I think we're going to wrap it up after this, unless anyone else wants to come up. But One important thing to realize about our group is that we did not have a mandate, nor did we spend too much time on programming. Our goal here is to build the infrastructure. The community as a whole will get together afterwards and decide, this is important, that's important, use this thing for these hours, for these people, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, hugely important. It's just not our mandate. And I want to end this by saying, first, thank you all for coming. We obviously have spent an inordinate amount of volunteer time to do this. Everyone on this committee, I can't imagine a more dedicated group. I mean, I worked with people who were paying a lot of money to be there that didn't show up nearly as much as these folks. So we all worked really hard. And I just want to make sure you understand, the town has talked about this forever. We expect that people are not going to be happy with this piece or that piece. There's nothing we can do to make everyone happy. I'm not happy with every piece, and no one else should be. But we have to move forward. We can't be keep going like this. It just cannot. You can not like certain things. You can like certain things. You can vote against it. But we are asking the town to offer a referendum on this. Let the townspeople decide what they want to do. And I think it's just hugely important for all of us. You know, I work in town, I see people coming into this town all the time. People love this area, people want to be here. But particularly the families, they have a hard time finding enough things for their children to do. So I'm just imploring all of you. I've been in this town for so long, I've seen so many projects have this opposition that lasts for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And it just drags on and on. This has been dragging on for 50 years. It has to stop. We have to do something. So I'm not saying that anyone who's against this is a bad person or they're wrong or anything like that at all. There's many different reasons to be against certain pieces of this or that piece or that piece. We will work through it. All of your voices matter. All of our voices matter. But we have to move forward. And so I'm imploring people, please do not just try to stop it cold. Because your idea of what can happen, it would take another 25 years. So we just have to move forward. And the last thing to leave with is, again, growing up in this town, I can understand anyone looking at this and saying, oh my God, it's way out of scale, it's too big, it's too this. There's parts of that that are true, but we're not going to do it all unless we can have the help of grants and private fundraisers. Right now, what we're asking everyone to focus on is 1A and 1B. This is not an out of scale plan. This is a youth center, a senior edition, and making our fields nicer and opening up 6 acres that none of us knew existed, myself included. So it's not this overly massive scale program. The two big pieces that I think are large, but we're only going to do them if we can find those folks that will help us, are an indoor pool and indoor gymnasium. Those are half the cost of the entire project. So I'm imploring all of you to get together as a community, build a new youth center, build a senior center edition, and make our fields nicer. And if along the way we can find people that will help us mission this dream of having an indoor pool and an indoor gymnasium, wonderful. Right now, let's just move forward and stop arguing. Thank you.
Please vote for both 1A and 1B on the